Welcome back! In the last video we reached the monkey inside the Deku Palace and learned the Sonata of Awakening, which will let us enter the Woodfall Temple. Now the monkey told us to take the shortcut to Woodfall that is just outside the palace, so you want to turn off to the right and hop along the lily pads to get to the grassy platform here with the sign. It says that this leads to the Woodfall shortcut, so we know we're heading in the right direction. You want to use the Deku flower to enter the cave-like entrance. I think that name is a little bit misleading, really this is the only way to reach there at this time, so how is it a shortcut? It's like the only path you can take. Anyways, this takes you to the southern portion of Southern Swamp. We've actually been here before, but it's just outside the Deku Palace area, but this time we're up on a higher elevation. If you fall down, you'll have to enter the Deku Palace again and use the Woodfall shortcut to get back here. You'll encounter some new enemies here called Dragonflies. When they get close, they'll try and hit you with their stinger. You just want to defend with R and then shoot them with a bubble once they get a gap between their attacks. You can also hit their tail with your sword just after they attack, but it's a bit more risky, and the Blast Mask is actually very effective against them, so if you're having trouble, you can do that as well. And finally, you can also dive into the Deku Flowers and simply wait for them to try attacking you, and as they pass over the flower, you can simply shoot up into them to kill them instantly. Once you've taken them out, you want to go ahead and work your way up from flower to flower along the pretty obvious path, and this will eventually lead to a platform with a stone tablet on it, as well as a familiar character from the last game, Kippora Gibora. This owl will give you information and tips, so he's kind of another variation of your fairy, but even more annoying if that's possible. Luckily, he's actually far more helpful in this game, and his conversations are a little more condensed this time around than they were in the previous game, Ocarina of Time. So he explains that the owl statues you've been seeing around here were placed there by him, conveniently. I didn't know owls could make statues, but you can use them to pause your progress, but also you can use them to teleport to them anytime you want by playing a song that's on the stone tablet here that he's sitting on. So once he leaves, you want to check out that stone slab to learn this awesome new song that we'll be using a ton throughout this whole game. This is actually really nice to have just one song for all the teleporting. It makes it a lot easier to remember. With that cool new melody in hand, you want to use the nearby Deku Flower to fly across the waterfall and find the entrance to Woodfall. As you enter, the screen will show you a platform on the far southern side that has an image of a Deku on it. That's our destination, and we'll be working our way over there. So once you regain control, you can get an optional chest that you can see on your minimap. You want to turn off to your left and use the lily pad that is hiding amongst the reeds to get to the platform with a chest containing a red rupee. I'm going to go back the other way, and once you get back to dry ground, you can continue on to the next section, which is straight ahead, and you'll find a new enemy called a hip loop. They charge at you if they see you, and will knock you back once they reach you, whether you're using your shield or not. So this makes them kind of dangerous when you face them on platforms above things like, poison water. Of course, situations like this is the only times you ever actually see them, so the worst possible situation. So they can be defeated with all sorts of things, but I recommend keeping your distance. You can defend with your shield, but they could knock you back into the water, which is annoying. I tried to show the Blast Mask here, which kills them in a single hit, but I missed. However, you can also just back up, since they're not the sharpest pencil in the box. Yeah. So there's several ways you can kill them, really, and if you plan on using your Deku Mask, I recommend you hit them with bubbles before they can ever get close, because if they do manage to knock you into the water, you'll probably just sink before you can bounce back to safety. So then you'll reappear on the platform right next to them and instantly get knocked back into the water again, making a glitch where you're perpetually sinking over and over and over again. I've actually had that happen to me a couple different times just playing around with them, and it's really obnoxious. But these Mad Scrubs are quite a bit easier than the ones we faced in the Deku Palace, just for the simple reason that they're positioned a little bit better. But you can just spin into them to claim their Deku Flower, and then when you fly over to them, you can also just land right next to them and spin, to kill them as well. And you can also use Deku Nuts in midair and also on the ground. You can just stand right next to them and use Deku Nut, and it will kill them instantly. Ironically, they often drop Deku Nuts when defeated, which is probably the best item to kill them with. They're like setting up for their own death. So once you reach the main platform that we saw earlier, Tattle will mention that there's a Deku Scrub symbol in the center of it, so we'll actually come back to that, but for now, just strike the owl statue nearby with your sword. Now, just a few minutes ago, we learned the Song of Soaring, which lets us warp to these owl statues. This is essentially a huge shortcut to the temple, so we'll be using it here in just a moment. Now, there's a chest just south of this platform, so you can use the Deku Flower to fly over to it. And there's also one more chest we can get in this area, so you can either go get it now, or you can wait until after the temple, since once you complete it, there won't be any enemies in this area, so it'll be a little bit easier to get over there. So either way, you can wait, but I'm going to go ahead and get that chest now. You just want to follow the platforms and you'll have a hip loop to kill along the way, and here I was hanging back because I didn't want to draw the attention of the dragonfly that is flying around in the distance. It's annoying to face them both at the same time, especially on this skinny platform, and I also kind of knocked myself into the water. But if you drown in your Deku Scrub form, you'll just reappear without taking any damage on the platform. And that can be really annoying next to these hip loops because you'll just repeatedly knock you off into the water over and over and over again, and it's really obnoxious. So anyways, I suppose they set it up that way so you don't take any damage when you drown because they didn't want anybody to kill themselves during the first 3 days. That would be kind of depressing. You just started the game, you're not even facing any enemies and you kill yourself. So anyways, those dragonflies can also be killed with the blast mask, and once they get close, which is pretty cool, I was actually waiting for it to come over to me, but it never did. And apparently you also need to tilt the analog stick upwards so that you point your shield a little upwards when the mad scrubs are shooting Deku nuts at you, because otherwise you'll get smacked, just like I just did. Now, if you find yourself right next to a dragonfly, I recommend just shooting it with a bubble, since that's probably one of the fastest things you can do. But as I mentioned earlier, you can also dive into these Deku flowers and wait for the dragonfly to pass over you, so that you can shoot up into it, which will also kill it instantly. So once you finally reach the chest, you can open it to get a piece of heart. Now, if you already opened this chest in a previous 3-day cycle and got the piece of heart, then this will just be some rupees instead, and that's why. So now, if you've been following along with me, you should have 10 pieces of heart right now, and so we only need 2 more to get another heart container. But we have to go a little out of our way to go do that, and currently I just enter the temple at this point whenever I play Majora's Mask. So, personal preference, but if you would like to earn more pieces of heart, you should check out our Pieces of Heart guide on our website. Specifically, I'd recommend going to the Deku Playground in North Clocktown, and also taking a pictograph of Tingle and giving it to the big guy in the Swamp Tourist Information Building. So those are 2 easy pieces of heart that you should do next if you want to do that. So that will bring you up to 12. Now, I'll be doing both of those things in the next chapter, so don't worry if you don't do it now, because I will be doing them later. Anyway, at this point we have everything we need to enter the temple, but our wallet is fairly full, and we also used quite a bit of time in the Deku Palace and, getting the Sonata of Awakening and all that, so I recommend you use the Song of Soaring to get back to Clocktown. You can warp to those owl statues that are in Clocktown that I smacked earlier. If you're following with me, you would have done that too, but if you don't have that owl statue activated, you can also warp to the one in Southern Swamp, which is not quite as far away, but that'll work too. And if you don't have that one either, then you're going to have a long ways to run. But anyway, if you can put your rupees in the bank and then play the Song of Time to return to the dawn of the first day. Then you want to play the Song of Time backwards to slow time down, so we'll slow it to 1/3 that of normal. This will give us the most amount of time possible to complete this temple. Next, you want to use the Song of Soaring again to warp back to Woodfall. Outside of all the temples in this game, there are jars that contain useful items that will help you in the temple. So you want to just smack all these jars to stock up on all your items. There's also a red fairy here in one of these that you can swipe and put it in one of your bottles for later. Fairies are the best healing in these Nintendo 64 titles anyway, since they restore your life completely in these games. And also, they will heal you automatically when your life runs out. So it's basically like having a free life type mechanic. It's pretty sweet. So now the monkey mentioned earlier that the Deku royal family were the only ones who could open the temple because of that song, and he also mentioned that your Deku pipes sounded just like those of the Deku princess. So you want to put on your Deku mask, stand on the Deku Scrub symbol here in Woodfall, and you want to play the Sonata of Awakening that we learned from the monkey, and this will initiate a cool scene of the temple appearing out of the swamp water. So once it fully appears, you want to just use the Deku flower to fly over to it, and join me for the next chapter where we will tackle the Woodfall Temple.
What?